I had to make a video. Just the ridiculous irony of a failed psychologist talking about the baby mutilation accords as a solution to the Middle East problems, which are literally caused by child abuse. Yes, child abuse. Because when you torture little children and little babies, it forever alters their brain development, creating what's called an adverse childhood experience, which has been studied by Harvard University. And this is a psychologist. A psychologist. How can you brainwash somebody so much? And you know I'm talking about Jordan Peterson. How could you brainwash a psychologist? A psychologist with the Abraham Accords. I mean, we are literally propping up this genital mutilator. The person that supposedly started it, I don't really even believe he ever existed. But I mean, it's a fairy tale. This was a marking of Egyptian slaves that former mutilated Jewish men turned into a religion. Formerly slave mutilated men who it became part of their culture. If you haven't noticed by looking at American men and looking at FGM women, female genital mutilation victim women, they all support their mutilation. The large majority of them. The large majority of women, and you tell this to the most people in the United States, they would have no idea that the large majority of female genital mutilation victims support their cutting in the same manner that the males in America and victims like probably Jordan Peterson, they tend to support their mutilation. Do you think something psychological is at play? Do you think someone with a psychological degree, PhD or something, I thought, isn't Jordan Peterson a PhD in psychology? You would think that somebody with a psychology degree would be able to put together, if you mutilate babies and torture children, there will be violence in the future because you alter brain development and you scar the child's future development of his brain, literally their brain. Psychologists call this the critical period. You think Jordan Peterson doesn't know this? You don't think he knows that this is the critical period? Do you not think that cutting off half the surface area, the primary sensory tissue, the most pleasurable sensitive nerve endings of the human body, of the male body, which is equivalent to cutting off the entire external female clitoris in sensory destruction, and you think cutting into that with weak to no anesthesia, 55% of children in America receive no anesthesia. For the entire history of the world, these children, babies, have received no anesthesia. In fact, the men that the men that are doing this stuff, the violent men, they receive no anesthesia whatsoever. You think they use anesthesia in Islamic countries? In Turkey, when they dress the boys up in those crazy little hats and these outfits, and they make this big jingo out of it. Hey, you're going to get mutilated today. You're going to get tortured and abused and sexually violated for the fact that we can't read the Quran, and we forgot to read the parts in the Quran, the 6 parts or so that say Allah created us perfectly. The other 2 parts that say don't cut parts off, don't alter Allah's creation or cut parts off cows' ears, cut cows' ears off, and it would say that Satan would try to convince us to mutilate his creation. I mean, that's in the Quran. The Quran also says nothing is left out of this book. Guess what's not in the book? Circumcision. Circumcision was never even done to Muhammad. You know, Allah's prophet was never circumcised. And they say, oh, there's some hadith that said he was born without the foreskin, so he was perfect. But every part of Allah's creation is perfect, you hypocrites. Did you read the book? Okay, so anyways, the reason why we have no peace in the Middle East and we just have wars and violence, the reason is because these are all genital mutilation cultures. The reason why the United States is involved in all these wars all over the world, we our genital mutilation culture. That's why we have school shooters. That's why we have serial killers. That's why we have the highest prison population in the world. That's why we have men that can't think straight and use their brain and realize that missing the most pleasurable, sensitive part of our body is the same thing as cutting off the entire external clitoris. Now, there's a whole internal clitoris of a woman, right? Do your research. But the external clitoris has the main sensory nerves of supposedly 8,000 or whatever. The male foreskin is 15 square inches, 18.4, I think, in some studies, 18.4 square inches. That's bigger than the phone I'm videoing on right now, on my big smartphone. So you think that cutting off the most sensitive part of a child's genitals with no anesthesia whatsoever, and the 45% of the American babies that do receive anesthesia, a third of that is sugar water. A third of that is, another third is a pacifier. And the other third is a dorsal nerve block, which is only 40 to 50% effective. Meaning every single child that is mutilated will suffer excruciating, mind-altering, torturous pain that far exceeds what most men will ever experience in their entire lives. And we have psychologists talking about the Abraham Accord. No, I hope for peace in the Middle East. I think it's horrible what's happening over there. But to deny the reasons and to continue the charade of genital mutilation of children without being honest with ourselves, you can't tell me, you cannot tell me these sociologists, these psychologists, these nurses, these doctors don't realize that this is completely, utterly ludicrous and ridiculous and outrageous and disgusting and cowardly. It is child sexual abuse. It is assaulting the child's genitalia. You're not cutting off their pinky fingers. You're not cutting off their earlobes. You're not cutting off their nose. I got a big nose. I got big earlobes. I got a pinky finger. I would probably give 2 of my pinky fingers for the most pleasurable, sensitive part of my body back, and to not be tortured as a baby and given lifelong anger issues because I was abused by a quack without the common sense of a 5th grader. A 5th grade science student who's been through biology and has understood natural selection, the basics, fundamentals of natural selection, that understands that the interplay of the genes with the environment favors certain genes, and there's constant mutations over time and decades and years and years and years. How would a species create a failed tissue in 5,488 mammal species that have a prepuce? How would we survive? For over 160 million years we've had a prepuce. Women have a prepuce. It's called the clitoral hood. All we hear are body shaming, denial, trivializing, complete ignorance. It's like I live in a slavery environment still. I mean, it's just so unintelligent. These are doctors. These are medical doctors. 60,000 pediatricians in the United States of America. 60,000 of these people are brainwashed into mutilating little babies? Where are the pediatricians speaking out? Where? I know we got doctors opposing circumcision. I know there's the random doctor speaking out, with the cojones enough to speak out and the brains enough. But where are the rest of them? Where? Where are all of the rest of the doctors? How many millions of doctors do we have? You want to hear something ridiculous? You want to hear something ridiculous? Okay, so I used to do orthopedic rehab. Okay, so there's a way of feeling the spinous process of the C1 cervical vertebrae. You have to shut your jaw forward and you can feel it in certain people. Not all people, but most people you can. My sister's husband is a doctor. Okay, he's a radiologist. Very intelligent man. Like photographic memory type man. This guy tells me, oh, you can't feel that from there, because I'm telling my sister, because she had this horrible personal trainer who was like an abomination of personal training. I mean, just had her like hunched over and doing the worst exercises and facilitating this really bad forward head posture and all these bad postural problems, right? So, you know, the crazy thing is if I was a mechanic, everybody in my family would be coming to me about car problems. Everybody. Oh, my carburetor's doing this, or my fuel injection or whatever. You know, asking me all kinds of questions. Here I am, a top-level trainer, probably one of the best in my industry, and nobody asks me anything. Nobody respects it. It's just so weird, like how there's these certain areas of our lives where just like this brainwashing, this inability to see what is literally sunlight, in your face, it's that obvious. And almost just still deny it. Like how would you take psychology and not know, and not have the basic fundamentals of child trauma and understand the damage of child trauma? I mean, it alters brain development. The amygdala is the fight or flight. It's kind of like your alert system, right? The amygdala has been shown to grow larger in children who've experienced early life trauma. We're talking about the most sensitive part of our body being sliced and diced by psychopaths with no human emotion or compassion or common sense. I mean, these are doctors. These doctors, don't they go to... I mean, I heard so much about how hard it was to get into medical school. They were denying all these people with 4.0s and just denying all these super, super smart people to get into medical school. Is it a lobotomy? Did you get a lobotomy going into medical school? Is there some sort of alien brainwashing, some reptilian? You guys get sucked in by some like amoeba brain thing? Some sort of advanced alien AI that's, sneaking its way into our medical professions? I mean, how could you be so ubiquitously stupid? Okay, so back to my sister's husband. He's a great guy. He says to my sister, and she tells me this, I don't feel like I'm missing anything. Really? You don't remember the cervical thing? You don't remember that, Mr.? I don't want to talk bad about him. I love the guy. He's a great guy. He's a great father to my nieces and nephews. But it's just like, it's ubiquitous. This is my point. It's so crazy. You have like a Jordan Peterson sitting here talking about the Abraham Accords. Abraham was the man that supposedly in the Bible started genital mutilation, that caused all of this. I'm not saying that there's no, cultures with foreskin that have problems, or that, there isn't other psychological traumas. But damaged children create damaged adults, and they create the violence that we are suffering from as a society. So when someone says to me, oh, don't you have something better to do than complain about someone cutting off a little slice of your skin, the 18.4 square inches, the 75% of the nerve endings, the two most pleasurable parts, the frenulum and the ridge band, full of miser corpuscles, the most sensitive nerve endings in the human body. Dicing and slicing and cutting and clamping and ripping and scraping. Do you know the first thing they have to do? The foreskin is adhered to the glands through what's called the balano-prepubital lamina. It's a tissue that has nerve endings in it. It's like the bed of your nail, okay? It's like ripping off a nail bed one by one. It covers the entire glands. The glands, when you see those horrible pictures of a baby that's been freshly sexually assaulted and mutilated and violated in the worst way possible, I mean, this is the top level of pedophilia, if I can even say that on this without getting blocked anymore. I mean, you can't even call out the fucking weirdos and the sickos attacking babies' genitals. You can't even call it out. That's the top level, is cutting and creating a permanent scar. And we have 60,000 pediatricians in America, millions of doctors, my own sister's husband denying his own anatomy. I'm like, wait a minute. Have you ever read the histology studies? Have you read the sensitivity testing of sorrels? Have you read the histology testing of Dr. Taylor Colden Lockwood? Have you? How would you know? This tissue, okay, just think about this in your head. This tissue everts. It's a really amazing development of ingenuity of nature. Millions of years of adaptation created this. There's new adaptations in humans from our last chimpanzee ancestor that we have living today. I think the split was 6 to 7 million years ago, or I could be wrong about that. But anyways, I'm thinking something else. But anyways, there's adaptations. If you look at Professor Kenneth McGrath's video, damn, I won't remember the name, but I will put it in the description. If you go watch his video, he talks about how there's actually been new developments, and that literally the male prepuce is the main thing, because it everts during an erection. It grows, right? And it grows, that tissue everts. It was once inside and now it's outside. And guess where it's at? Guess who it's in contact with? Guess where's the play, the field of play is happening? In the intact man. It is the prepuce. That is the most pleasurable part. This is equivalent to cutting off the entire external clitoris of a female. And you can go talk to the Islamic women that have had this done to them, or I know they do it in Bondo cultures, which I don't know if all of them are Islamic or not, but I know Bondo cultures and Sierra Leone and a couple of these Middle African cultures where they have this huge ceremony and they do this cutting, but the women do the cutting, okay? And they also cut the boys. There's no cultures that do FGM that don't cut the boys. But anyways, these cultures themselves, the women say, oh, we're fine. We're just fine. I've had arguments with them online. They're arguing for it. They support it. Like 98% of female genital mutilation victims support it. Why do you think Jordan Peterson, who has a psychology PhD, can't connect the Abraham mutilation with the violence and the constant, never-ending violence? Why isn't there never-ending violence in Europe? Why? I mean, there has been. I know Europeans, you can't really, all the world wars and all that stuff. But what I'm saying is, a lot of these Scandinavian countries, it's almost like they progressed to a certain stage that the rest of the world is stuck back here. The United States is full of violence. We glorify it in our music, our cultures. You know, it's like the tough guy, the cool guy. You know, you can beat up people. He's the dominant male, right? The alpha guy. They call it toxic masculinity now because you have a bunch of insecure, sexually damaged men who don't even know they're sexually damaged, psychologically altered. This upregulates the fight or flight nervous system. Okay, let me explain this. The fight or flight has been updated to the fight, flight, or freeze. So when you have somebody that say the babies were silent, they slept through it? No. That baby is in such a state of trauma and shock that it's literally withdrawn and going into a state of shock. Okay, fight, flight, or freeze. Google it. I'm not making any of this up. You can go to Google adverse childhood experiences. You could Google Harvard University. They have this whole program called the developmental child. While they're in denial of the worst trauma done to babies. The American Academy of Pediatrics came out and said some of these procedures that we're doing to babies may be damaging their brain development and harmful. Really? 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 I mean, really? This is the world I live in? Jordan Peterson, get a grip, buddy. Get in touch with reality. How are you going to have the Abrahamic Accords? The guy that started the mutilation, the fairy tale. I promise you. I don't want to get into religion. But no. Religion has no right to alter children or damage children. In fact, Allah says not to alter his creation. Allah said he made us perfectly. He didn't say, he made Muhammad perfect by giving an apostate, which is like a born without a foreskin, which is literally a genetic defect. I guess Allah gave him, this is what I've heard for people trying to justify this. They said that, so they said that Allah made a Muhammad born without a foreskin. There was nothing of that in the Quran. This is all the hadiths written afterwards by all these people. And sorry, Islamic people and the Quranic people. If you really to follow the Quran, you would not alter Allah's creation, and you would not degrade Allah's creation by calling it dirty. There's no parts of our bodies that are dirty. If your hands are dirty, you don't cut off a finger, you wash your hands. I mean, at some point we have to get past these ridiculous claims. These ridiculous, just blind, just lack of common sense. I don't even know how to describe it. How just utterly ridiculous it is. I mean, I'm mind-boggled that I even have to make a video like this, that I even have to tell people to leave their children's genitals alone. I have sent images and pictures to my family members and had them tell me, I don't think it's a big deal. I mean, if a dog munching on a baby's not a big deal, then that's not a big deal. If a dog munching on a baby is a big deal, that's a big deal too. Taking a knife and ripping apart a baby's genitals? Remember I said it was adhered to the glands through the balloon prepubital lamina? That hole that the babies pee through, that has to be ripped open. And this thing called a circumprobe shoved into there to break that adhesions, which is probably next to the most, if not the most, at least very near the most painful part of the whole procedure. Guess what adults don't have to go through? The ballono prepubital lamina. What does that mean, prepubital? It means it breaks down before puberty. Okay, around 10 years of age is the average age of retraction. Before then, the glans is fused to the head. You want to know how stupid and utterly in denial these doctors are? You want to know how ridiculous and how extensive this really goes? 43% of intact U.S. babies have been force retracted by QUACKS. Do you know what force retraction is? That ballono prepubital lamina, they break it. They force it back and rip and break this tissue. This is the number one cause of phimosis. If you look at Robert's neonatal book, it talks about this, and so does Avery's neonatal book. This is the development of the normal human male genitalia. I took Anatomy and Physiology 101 and 102. Both of them I got A's in. One of my anatomy professors became one of my clients as a personal trainer. He used to send me his clients who had back problems, neck problems, all these other things. Right? I took your anatomy and physiology courses. Guess what? I never learned anything about the prepuce. I don't even think it was mentioned. I don't even think it was in the diagrams. We have fake diagrams being given to doctors. They don't know the histology. Histology is a study of tissue. Any doctor knows this. They don't even know the epidemiology. The epidemiology of circumcision is ridiculous. There's no increased diseases in intact cultures. There's none. I used to live in Germany as a child. You know how often the Germans, when I lived there, this was 1989, you know how often the Germans bathed? About once a week. About once a week. Americans, we were way more concerned and we washed constantly, but the Germans, they didn't care. You could smell them and they didn't care. These are intact men. These are intact men. How do you think our ancestors survived natural selection? This is a violation of every common sense principle known to man. This is a violation of ethics, common sense, human decency, sexuality, body autonomy. I mean, there is nothing that this makes sense. There's no excuse. They say UTIs, rare. UTIs are so rare, most men will never get one. And the supposed benefit only lasts for the first year, apparently. And the supposed benefit is like a small reduction of a small reduction. And this was done on babies who were force retracted, by the way, which now you know creates an opening to the meatus, which is where the UTIs got in there. And guess what? When they did these studies, most of the babies that were still intact were intact because they were premature. Prematurity is an increased risk factor for UTIs. The UTIs is nonsense. There's no increased UTIs in Europe. And then what are the other ones we got? Penile cancer? Less than 1 in 100,000 men will ever have penile cancer. Happens when you're 70 to 80 years of age. Has a like 98% survival rate or 95% survival rate. Just this high survival rate. So you're going to mutilate every baby for 1 in 100,000, a small chance. Now, Scandinavia countries and Japan, with all of their foreskin, have lower penile cancer than we do. Lower. If you cut a part off, can you get cancer in it? No. Can you get nose cancer? You cut off your nose? No. You want 100% reduction in nose cancer? Cut off your nose. Okay? I think it's 30% of females will get breast cancer in their lifetime. It has a huge death rate. I think it's like a 30% death rate over the entire world. A 30% death rate, 30% of women, 30%, you do the math. We would do far more health benefits by cutting off little girls' breast buds. Do you know how ridiculous that sounds? It sounds a lot better than cutting off little babies' genitalia for a UTI or penile cancer. You're actually saving lives. Literally. And then the idea of HIV and STDs? What? First off, what baby is in danger of HIV and STDs? And if your baby is in danger of HIV and STDs, you need CPS called on you immediately. Immediately. A man can make his own decision. Then when you understand the mechanical function, this is a rolling gliding tissue which reduces friction of intermission. It maintains moisture acting as a stop gasket. Why do you think circumcised men require lube? Especially if I go past the half an hour? Women dry out. You have to have lube. Wow. Let's think about this. Let's put our brainiacs on here. If you pull out the ball bearings and you remove the grease, derp, 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 is it mechanically possible to decrease HIV and STDs? What causes HIV and STDs? It's a micro tear, an abrasion, a broken skin, or somehow semen getting through. But for the man, from female to male transmission, right? That's what this is supposedly for. It has to come through a tear in the skin. Do African men have a bunch of lube laying around? They got silicone factories pumping out bottles of lube. You know how much it costs for me to bottle silicone? The one that doesn't dry up and cake up? $30 for a little thing like this. $30. $30. Increased micro tears, increased vector, increased disease transmission. It is mechanically impossible for circumcision to reduce HIV or STDs, which is why the U.S. has high rates of both in the developed world. How is a country with the highest rates of HIV and STDs in the developed world, including all of the uncircumcised countries, the intact countries? I hate the uncircumcised word because it implies that circumcised is the normal state when it is not. By the way, 70% of the males in the world are intact. 70%. 30% of those, the huge percentage of those are Muslim. And we've already talked about that. That's not even their religion. Wow. What a world I live in. What a world I live in. But anyways, Jordan Peterson, the rest of the world, all of you people that have your head in the sand like an ostrich, you got your ass in the air, your head just diving into that sand in complete denial. All you sociology professors, all you psychology professors, all you psychologists, all you child psychologists, all you pediatricians, all you OBGYNs, all you general practitioners, all you doctors that do this, all you parents, all you men in denial that would rather harm babies than admit the truth, than come to terms with our reality, the fact that we were damaged, and you can't admit, oh my God, I can't admit my little wee-wee is a little damaged. And you say, why am I doing this? Why would I stand against the entire ignoramuses, the mass psychosis in my society to protect children? Why would I do something like that? Why would I quit a job I was making great money at? Fantastic money. I made close to 12 grand my last month in business. Moved to California, packed it up. I'm going to do it there. Then I found out about all this stuff. And I just realized I had to do something. So I quit my job, my nice cushy job I would have made lots of money in. And I probably still will. Because I'm going to revamp and come back with a vengeance. Because this brain, it's a lot of common sense. And I'm not a genius. And I know my flaws. I know I'm an idiot. I know I forget stuff. But analytically, logically, ethically, I'm solid as you can find a man. And when it comes to outsmarting 1 million, 2 million, I don't know how many doctors there are in the United States of America, and the small percentage of the doctors who actually do speak out against it. And thank you, doctors opposing circumcision, and Dr. George Dennison, and some of the other doctors, Morton Frisch, I think his name is. Anyways, some of you amazing doctors who have come out and spoke out about this. I'm definitely not talking to you. You are the few, the real ones. But how I outsmarted all of these other doctors. I outsmarted my brother-in-law twice. Even though, I get, when it comes down to it, I'm sure in other ways he would just blow me away. The guy's a very smart man. It doesn't change the fact that this is a psychological defense mechanism, and education should fix that. A doctor's degree should fix that. A psychology should Sociology 101 should fix that. Cultural Anthropology 101. Taking both of them. Both A's. Okay? Taking both of them. 101, the basic classes. That's all it took for me. A logic class. A psychology class. A philosophy class. I took all the pre-med courses. Chemistry, biochem. I didn't take organic chemistry. I didn't take that one. Chem 101 and 102. And A&P. I took all of their pre-med courses. Any one of those courses, one of them should have enlightened these people. One of them should have enlightened these people. A fifth grader should get this. A child does get this. It's, this needs to be one of the biggest psychological research studies that has ever been done on humanity. Because we have to discover how this affects the brain. Because we have to know why it is so ubiquitous for men to be in denial. For this cultural-wide denial. I mean, the FGM victims supporting their own victimization. The MGM victims supporting our victimization. Literally becoming the mutilators. It's a cycle. This is where this word cycle comes from. These are all basic concepts in psychology, Jordan Peterson. These are basic concepts in psychology. I'm flabbergasted. I have lost just the ability to it just grates at my soul. It's like taking my soul and rubbing it on this cheese grater. Like my very heart, who I am as a human being, everything I believe in, everything I stand for, everything that is worth anything to me. This rips it apart, just destroys, damages our entire society. And if these revelations of these crazy religions come true, it's not because it's actually true. Don't think that. Don't get caught up in that rapture bullshit. Don't think it's actually true. It's because the psychological damage of our children has led to the destruction of our world, probably, maybe even human life on this planet. Hopefully cockroaches were evolved to have big brains. Right now, they have bigger brains than 60,000 pediatricians and millions of doctors. Guaranteed. Cockroaches don't mutilate their young. They might eat them or something, I don't know, but whatever. Higher brain function. Take a sociology class 101. If you didn't understand it, doctor, and you already went through that class, go back again. Take it 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times until you understand how you were so psychologically manipulated that you became a violent predator of babies' genitalia. A violent sexual predator of infants. I mean, how can it get more disgusting and just psychotic than that? I mean, I can understand serial killers more than I can understand a doctor who wanted to help people, right? Did some of you, at least some of you, a somewhat percentage of you wanted to help people? You didn't just do it for the paycheck or the Tesla or the prestige or the people, oh, doctor. Oh, he's a doctor. She's a doctor. Wow. Quack, 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 quack. Boom. Let the dog go get the duck. Bring him back. Let's have some dinner.